Stopping advanced threats requires knowing exactly what you're up against. ExtraHop Reveal X is the only solution that shows you not just where intruders are going, but where they've been. 90-day look-back and complete network visibility across the data center, cloud, and device edge help security teams respond 84% faster with ExtraHop Reveal X network detection and response. Explore the interactive demo at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. Cyber risk and compliance automation is finally here. Legacy GRC systems cannot support the powerful, real-time automation and oversight that organizations require to take risks that matter to succeed. CyberSync continuous control automation ingests data from the IT GRC stack to update controls against regulatory requirements and risks in real time, delivering insights and visibility. See how members of the Fortune 500 are saving millions annually by visiting securityweekly.com/CyberSync.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Adrian Sanabria. Security Weekly is proud to announce that we will be at InfoSec World 2021 in person. Yes, our second in-person event, October 25th, 27th, 2021. This year, our annual partnership with InfoSec World is extra special as we are both business units under the Cyber Risk Alliance brand. What does that mean for Security Weekly listeners and InfoSec World attendees? You get to see and hear from many of the Security Weekly team at the event, and you will save 20% off your World Pass. Visit securityweekly.com/ISW 2021 to register using our discount code. Do you want to stay in the loop on all things Security Weekly? Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe on your favorite podcast catcher, our YouTube channel, sign up for the mailing list, join Discord, and follow us on our newest live streaming platform, Twitch. All right, gentlemen, articles of the week. As you know, Jason, having been both a CIO and a CISO, I pull in some CIO stories every once in a while because they have a lot of overlap with our CISO audience. And this first article is about CIO succession planning.
Yeah, no, it's an important factor of leadership, no matter what department you're leading, right? Whether you're a CIO, you're a CFO, you're a CISO. At the end of the day, what I typically like to do with my teams is, groom a few members of the team to kind of learn the day to day. So at the end of the day, I tell them, your job is to put me out of a job, because when you put me out of a job, I'm moving on to my next best thing, right? So having that succession plan where you can actually give that leadership training, let's say, basically having a lieutenant that you can work with and really build them up to be a leader within your organization. That way you have a solid plan. If you go on to take a new role within your organization, you don't have to spend. I think we're talking about industry right now. It takes 6 to 8 months to get a C-level executive. If you're lucky, it's hard to fill those shoes. It's hard to fill in C-level executives, CIOs, CISOs. It takes a while. So, it benefits the team. It gives leadership strategies and training to your staff. And, it gives you a future-proof scenario where, you can have that strategy where you're future-proofing your business unit.
Yeah,
there's a bit of a hold my beer moment in this article here. And it says, I'm going to quote the article, CIOs have one of the shortest average tenures among the C-suite, with an average company stay of 4.6 years. CISOs be like...
Yeah. CISOs are like 18 months, right? Something like that.
Yeah, have that number. Yeah. But the trend in here that I thought was interesting, which isn't helping, is that more and more replacements are coming from the outside. To your point, yes. It takes 6 to 8 months. If you have valid resources internally and you're preparing for this succession at some point and training up internally, it could lead to better internal candidates to move into those roles and not wait 6 to 8 months for that gap to be filled from the outside.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a huge benefit, because out of the gate, now you still have that institutional knowledge within the business unit, right? So yes, it takes 6 to 8 months just to hire. How long does it take for that CIO to ramp up and learn the business, right? So that could take another 6 months. That could take a year. So building that type of a succession strategy is literally, I look at it like future-proofing your organization, because you're building a new leader, you're putting someone in a position where they could step into the role easily, and you're doing a service back to the business, back to customers, right? Because now you have someone who can jump in and take the role and really hit the ground running.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
So what does that look like? Is that like a chief of staff role? That person that you're kind of grooming for that position?
It could be anything, right? I mean, there's a reason why there are deputy CIOs now. There's a reason why there are deputy CISOs, right? I've seen some organization have the BSO, where they have a business line security officer. Maybe one of those business line security officers are getting groomed to be a CISO, right? So I think you can really pick and choose how you want that org structure to be, but at the end of the day, you got to get it done. You got to do it, right? You got to start planning for that and really finding the folks within your organization who will grow into that role. I mean, a key piece of that is just being able to teach business strategy, right? Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, as a CISO or a CIO, you're going to become a translator to and from the business. So you're going to be translating cybersecurity, right, or technology to other business units, to your board of directors, to your CEO. But then you have to take that business strategy back and translate it back to the team so you can execute.
Yeah, that's why that second point that's in this article around the business audience is so important. That's why I think the role of the BISO, the Business Information Security Officer, plays a very interesting role to bridge that gap if you do have to replace and allow them to move up. A chief of staff could as well, because they might be working across organizations, but having those folks in the business would definitely help with any transition of that kind of role change.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. This next article is, what is the hidden costs of technical debt? We've talked about tech debt a lot of times on this show and some of the challenges around technical debt. This was an interesting article because it tries to map out where some of those hidden costs are and where they're going to bite you later. What was it? The Cisco survey that they did at RSA conference, talking about one of the biggest ways to reduce your overall risk footprint was constant turnover and upgrade of your systems, right? Eliminating
tech refresh.
Debt. Right. Yep. Tech refresh was a big one. So this outlines some of these kind of hidden costs that people don't think about when it comes to tech debt.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there, right? When you're talking about legacy systems, end of life, end of support systems that you're trying to keep together with bubblegum and duct tape, right? I've seen that so many times, at customers, and they end up running into an issue. That's why they bring in a technology services organization. And it's not. Yes, security is a big piece of it, but when you start looking at the bigger, broader picture, operational efficiencies, staff overhead to manage these systems, right? Revenue opportunity loss because you're not bringing the latest, greatest technologies to your customers, right? And reaping the benefits of the value add that brings to the table, and maybe the efficiencies or streamlined process that brings to the table. So there's a lot there, a lot of overhead that comes with managing these legacy systems.
Curious, Jason, if you, this is a topic I've actually been chatting about a lot, just the age of assets and using that as like a KPI or KRI metric. Should people be setting, the date for things to be replaced, the actual expected lifetime of a system before they even deploy it, or when they deploy it?
I think they do. I think that's part of managing your CMDB, right? Part of managing your asset database in your CMDB is putting in that expected life cycle of that asset, right? And being able to track things like manufacturer maintenance dates, manufacturer end of life dates, so you can start targeting those timeframes to be able to do the right budgeting and financial planning to replace them. It has to be a structured program where you're going through and you're saying, all right, here's the refresh cycle for these type of assets that have, this expected shelf life. Because at the end of the day, you want that to be a proactive budgeting process, not a reactive budgeting process. I want to be able to go to my CFO and say, hey, while I'm doing the budget next year, I have all of these assets coming up. We have to plan for that, and we have to budget for that. So that's why I need this in my budget, this amount of money, right? And be able to have those good conversations and proactive conversations about budgeting, because at the end of the day, you're going to need the financials to do that.
Yep. An opportunity loss in the ability not to make up for some of that on the revenue side also hampers that discussion.
Absolutely.
When you're dealing with the P&L.
100%.
Security's not on this list, interestingly. I felt like that you could have put that on the top 5.
Absolutely. 100%. 100% could be in the top 5. And that was kind of my opening statement. Security obviously is a big deal, but there's all of these other, right? All of these other costs as well. And when you combine that conversation together and you say, here's the business risk that we're having from a security and compliance perspective, along with all of these other business cases you can bring to the table, that's when you bring a full package for investment to the CFO to get money, right? That's how you have that conversation.
And again, we're talking about business impact and business costs as part of the security discussion, and it's not a separate discussion per se.
That's right.
Yeah. This next article actually digs into the technical debt challenges, how to manage some of that. And what I thought was interesting is kind of what is driving tech debt. So the two things that popped up right away are mismatched code and staff turnover. Mismatched code means I got a lot of different code bases because of the legacy. I got stuff written in C, C++, and all the way through all these different languages. That coupled with staff turnover and the gap in some of the skill sets is what's fueling aspects of this tech debt.
That's right. And many organizations feel stuck. They feel stuck in a place that they you can drown in technical debt. And to be honest with you, we say it all the time here. No action is still an action. So you don't want to let yourself drown in that technical debt. And if you feel as an organization you really don't know where to go, find a partner, find someone who can help you, right? Because the quicker you can start getting out from under that technical debt, the better off your organization is going to be. So go find a business partner who can help guide you through a roadmap to start migrating out of that technical debt.
Yep, agreed. The 10 leadership habits to master. Good list. I thought it was a really good way to kind of lay out some of these top habits from a leadership perspective. I mean, they, as Paul and I have been integrating in with Cyber Risk Alliance, this is a lot of the foundational stuff we've had to do over the past number of months. So I thought it was fun to kind of have them listed out here all in front of us in a single article.
Yep. No, it's a great list. I mean, we've talked about it on the show a few times, a lot of these, and I really believe, having that level of communication with your team and with the business on your vision. So those top 1 and 2, I think are super, super important, right? Because, the organization needs to know where we're driving toward, and you need to be in constant communication with them. So that way everybody's on the same page, right? So those are the 2 biggies for me. Define your vision, make sure the teams know where you're headed, why you're headed there, and how we're going to get there together. And then constant communication and transparency with the teams.
Yeah.
And number 2 is kind of a prerequisite for a lot on there.
Yeah, agreed. I want to double tap in on number 5, document every process, because this is one of the investments Paul and I made from the podcast side very early on when I came over, which was to have our processes documented. Paul and I are big believers that over time we can, if you optimize process, you change the scale of the organization. You also change the resource needs of the organization. Can't do everything manually. But to automate, you need good documentation. So we've spent the time to do that. We're now doing that through the rest of Cyber Risk Alliance in documenting all of our processes, because how else do you scale? How else do you get away from all the manual requirements if you don't have a good starting point for what those processes look like today?
Absolutely 100% dead on. I mean, I started getting involved in lean business process mapping a long time ago. When I first started running my first IT department, I realized really quickly that a crappy process, you can throw any shiny technology on top of it, it's still going to be a crappy process and a crappy experience for the end users, right? And the people getting that service. So you have to dig into process. You have to document it. And it's not just documenting. It's always reviewing and continuously improving it. You have to review the process constantly and figure out where non-value add lives and try to rip that non-value add out of the process, whether it's through automation, elimination, whatever the case may be. You always have to focus on continuously improving those processes. So a review cycle for those processes is important as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to scale without continually optimizing process.
Right.
Otherwise, this is a huge cost burden to the organization, because you got to scale it with people, and it doesn't work.
Right.
Also, the other one that I think some leaders have a challenge with is number 8, delegate. Right, the ability to delegate to your staff to step up and take ownership instead of you needing to do everything. That's another big one I see with leaders.
Big time. Yeah, you have to let go. Right. I mean, I always say once you get into a leadership position in IT or in security, you have to start thinking about taking your hands off a keyboard. Right at the end of the day, because now you're leading teams to be successful, and you hire folks for a reason. Right. You don't hire folks so you have to micromanage them and be on top of them every day. You're hiring folks to go get a job done for you, right? You're the leader of that organization, and you're hiring for the skill sets that you need. Give the folks runway to go win, right? And go out there and win the game.
Yeah. And then if they run into an issue, figure out how to solve it for them, how to move them forward. That's number 10. And number 9, which we love, is create a healthy culture, which is what we've done here at Security Weekly. And it's starting to trickle across the rest of CRA.
I love it. Beautiful thing. Yep. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, number 6 is a personal passion of mine. You know, any new job I go to, I usually send out a link to Jason Fried's TED Talk, Why Work Doesn't Happen at Work. Yeah. And one of the big things I learned from that, like I remember him saying, look, if you got 14 people in a 1-hour meeting, it's not a 1-hour meeting, it's a 14-hour meeting.
Yep.
Meaning, like, look at it like a consultant, you know, like what's the amount of productivity? Like was that 1-hour meeting with 14 people in it really worth 14 productivity hours?
Right. We're changing that internally as well. So
it's one of the hardest ones because that is part of the culture, you know. I mean, it was really weird going to Thinkst because that's a company that doesn't really use email internally and doesn't really have meetings. You know, I mean, they'll set up an ad hoc meeting if they need it, you know, but almost everything was just through Slack, and it was it took a while to get used to that. Yeah, because without those regular meetings, you know, you start to think, well, you know, how do I know what's going on? You know, and you know, there are other ways to do that. You know, you don't need an hour meeting, and that's one of the other things Jason Fried jumps into is like, what's it called? Parkinson's law. So the amount of time that you give something, like the work will expand to fill that time. Like, what if it could be a 5-minute meeting? Yeah. Like, what if you just made the meeting 5 minutes and got done what you needed to get done in that 5 minutes because you set that constraint that small?
Yeah. I started doing something similar where I don't do hour meetings anymore. Half an hour is my limit. And I'm trying to start getting used to doing like 15-minute meetings, right? Yeah. And see how that works. So we'll see, right? We'll see if it's successful, but you're absolutely right. Why have a meeting for the sake of a meeting, and why make it an hour if it can be done in 20 minutes?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I've tried to go to 30-minute meetings for everything. I try to minimize how many of those I have in a week, right? So, like my new team, it's a half an hour meeting once a week. That's it. Everything else is done through communicators, right? Teams, Slack, whatever. We still have a few 1-hour meetings, like the ops meeting, because we got so much to cover. That's kind of the exception to the rule, but I try to keep them to half an hour or less now.
Yeah.
Let's see. Article number 5, how to build a strong crisis communications team. Lots of ransomware in the news, folks. Guess what? Crisis is coming. This article, you know, kind of gives you a little guide on making sure you're assigning the right roles and responsibilities and how to craft a better crisis team. It's a good starting point. I think it's missing some details that I think would be a good follow-up article, but it is a good primer.
Yeah. You know, it's funny how you learn things over time, right? And I really cut my teeth in IT leadership in government, in the public sector, right? And I thank God all the time just for my interactions that I had with the Emergency Management Agency, because they taught me a level of incident response based on EMA level crisis, right? And having that background only helped me on the security side, right? Being able to manage an incident like you were going through an EMA type course, right? Where you have everything predefined, you know all your stakeholders, people have roles and actions that they play as part of the response process. Everything is very process oriented, like we were talking about before, right? It's funny how you learn things from other disciplines, but EMA strategies around crisis management are outstanding.
Yeah.
Well,
and so
go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, you sign the right roles, you delegate. We just talked about delegation from a leadership perspective. Then you communicate in smaller teams so each group has their own components to manage. Way more efficient than what we were just talking about, the big meeting, right? What are you going to do? Bring everybody in and just leave them on for 24 hours straight to deal with the crisis? Right. Not very efficient.
Right.
Yeah, I think the other side of this is the PR piece of crisis communications is so important. The timing is important. I've seen so many companies go through identical situations, and one comes out, relatively smelling like a rose, and the other one has just done so much more damage than the attack did, just by handling it badly, by coming out and saying, no, it's not happening, denying it, and then not getting information out. Like I remember when Sony Pictures got hit, you actually had Sony Pictures employees emailing journalists because journalists had access to the data, asking, is my data in the leak? Because they couldn't get anything from their employer.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why, the planning piece, to be able to have a very strong communications plan. And believe me, that's a collaboration effort right there, right? You develop the communications plan with your legal team, with your HR team, with your finance team, because there are aspects to all of the communications that affect all of those different stakeholders. And you want to make sure that you have a really, really structured communication plan and how you're going to deliver that information over time. It's got to be planned. You have to train the way you fight, right?
Yeah, like Buffer, for example, had one of their best sales days ever just because people were so impressed with how they handled their breach.
Right. Yep. And it's not you can't just step into it on a whim, right? And do a good job. You just can't.
Nope. Planning.
Lots of planning for these things.
Yeah.
Yep. Got to plan it. Got to be prepared. Last article, 5 ingredients to finding satisfaction and fulfillment in your work. Can anybody guess which one is my gap?
Which one's your gap?
My gap.
Know when to work and when not to work.
Balance. You guessed it, baby.
You know why? Do you know why I picked that for you? Because it's the same one for me. That's all I did. I picked mine, and I knew it'd be yours.
Yep.
Number 4 is easy.
Yeah, I mean, some of these are easy, right? But I mean, I thought it was a good list as a starting point. Look, if you're coming back into the workforce or you're looking to change jobs, I think this is a really good guideline to kind of direct, what do I want out of a company when I go into a company, right? My biggest challenge, I know the why, I know what we do, I know why we do it, I know why I'm here. I don't have to worry about that. My problem has always been balance, knowing when to stop working, because otherwise I get it from the wife.
Same here. You yelled at from the wife and kids, but no, I mean, to take the 30,000 foot view on this, you got to be. It's a mutual relationship between the employer and the employee, right? And culturally, it has to be a good fit, right? Sometimes organizations aren't a good fit for me, and sometimes I may not be a good fit for the organization, right? And you just got to be able to look at it and realize when the fit is there, right? So knowing who you're working for and knowing what their vision is and why you're doing the work is important. So that way, you're aligned to it or you're not.
Right. And I to me, when one of these falls out of place, except for balance for me, but when some of the other ones fall out of balance, that's when you start looking, right?
Yep.
When the meaning is gone or when the direction is wrong, that's when people start to look. That's why I said this is a really good 5 kind of things to look at to make sure you're aligned with the company you're working for or the company you're getting ready to work for.
Yeah. And I look at these when I look at metrics, I look at 2 different kind of indicators, right? Lead indicators and lag indicators. These are really good lead indicators, right? Lead indicators to show that maybe the alignment between you and the employer is no longer there. That way, it doesn't go down the rabbit hole for too long. Do you know what I mean? So you start looking at these as lead indicators to really give you metrics on whether or not the compatibility is still there. I'll put it.
Agreed.
And number 2 and number 4, I think, are interesting. Those are ones, when I chat with people, that are a little bit earlier in their career, or I'm mentoring people. At some point, you just got to get experience, and you can't afford to be too picky. But I think it was about 12 years into my career before I really started to think about number 2 and number 4. Why am I working? Why am I doing this? Do I want to switch industries? Is this what I want to keep doing for the rest of my life? And then also, it's at that point, it becomes about more than a paycheck. Once you have some options and things like that, you gotta get some enjoyment and satisfaction out of it. And that's one thing. Reflecting on my first gig, which was a large credit card processor, large financial company, that pretty much guaranteed I could never go back that route again, because job satisfaction would happen maybe once every 3 years or something like that. And I know for me, for the way I work, that I've got to be creating stuff, I've got to be turning stuff out, I've got to be getting feedback on it. Like I personally have that need. And I remember interviewing for a large bank and asking them, how long their average project was. And they're like, 3 to 5 years. I'm going to lose my mind. I cannot, I cannot do that. And it's funny because the hiring manager, like, he contacted me, he's because I was talking to some of his direct reports, and he was like, it seemed like the interview didn't go too well. Effectively, I threw it. I was like, no, this is not something I want to do. And he was like, I want you to interview with someone else next. And he's a good friend of mine now. But yeah, I told him, no, it's just not, this is not an environment that I can be happy in.
Yeah.
Number 2 and number 4 are reasons I've left employers, and also part of the reason why I ended up at Security Weekly way back in the day. So yes, they are important factors as well, for sure. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.